email. Hey, Ariel from Brussels. Yes, both the sessions you can find, all the sessions you can find, but after the summit. But it's good to come to the live so that you can have your interactions with the speakers and questions. Thank you, Sonia. So maybe we can just start. And to start, I would just invite you to close your eyes and to arrive here totally in your body, in your heart. So just taking few moments and breathing deep, just connecting with your breath. And maybe just allowing your body, if it likes to move a little bit, any kind of maybe shaking. Just allowing yourself to arrive here completely. Maybe you had a busy morning or a dreamy sleep or a quick bath, whatever, just it's past. So just to be here and now. And as this is a sexual education summit, it's important that we connect with our body, with our sensations. And today's session is on self-love and self-worth. So let's go a step further and we connect to our heart, to these sensations of love. Maybe if you would like to keep your hands on your heart, maybe you can feel your heartbeat. How is it? Is it slow, fast? Just listening to it, just listening to yourself. And allowing few deep breaths in your heart space. Let your love breathe. We are love, we are born in love. So just connecting to that deep, deep space inside. Maybe giving a little smile or hug to yourself and congratulating yourself to take out this time to be here in this session, in this moment, to nurture yourself. Saying thank you. And whenever you are ready, you can open your eyes and share. And you can, maybe if any one of you like to share how you felt, please feel free. Hugs back to you, Yael. Thank you. Whenever you are ready, just open your eyes, and if you like to share something, please, you're welcome. Peaceful, thank you. And let's welcome our dearest speakers and my dearest friends as well, James, Stevenson, and Riya Sokol. Thank you for joining us, Riya and James. Welcome to Sexual Education Summit, and thanks for taking out this time for us. It's quite early, especially for James, maybe in London, in England.
Mm-hmm. Scotland.
Yeah, in Scotland, okay. Yeah. So yes, James, I know James since many, many years, since I started. In fact, my journey, I would say my first Tantra festival is with James, where he was teaching. And yes, I know him since many years, and I've seen that growth in him as a teacher, as a facilitator, as a person. And he has been teaching all around the world. He creates 4 festivals in a year, in India, in Poland, in California, and in Amsterdam, in Holland. Poland
Holland,
Tantra Festival.
Portugal, yeah.
Ah, yes. Oh, instead of Poland, it's Portugal. Sorry, I missed. Yeah, I have to correct myself. And his teachings has been inspired by biodanza, tantra, shamanism, and energy work, and integral theory. So he's really deeply rooted when it comes to embodying these practices. So it's not. So it comes from a very deep space, I would say. And I've attended many of his sessions, and I'm truly inspired. Thank you, James,
Mhm.
for joining us, and thanks for being here. And we
Well,
have,
thank you for inviting me.
and they both really make a magnificent couple. Let me tell you that they're really, really that tantric, sparky, I would say, sparky, tantric, sensual, loving couple. And it's really an inspiration to see, you know, people so much together and integrated and doing and bringing this work together into the world. So it's like they're co-creating so much together. It's beautiful to see. And thanks, Riya. And Riya is a beautiful artist. She has so many, you know, feathers in her cap, I would say. She's an artist, singer, tantra coach, mother of 2, and her recent video on coronavirus on yeah, I have to remember the title. Sorry. Thank you, coronavirus. Yes, just got viral and it got many awards as well. So yes, you can check out the video. We can share the link at the end if you like to watch. And yes, thank you, Riya, for joining us. And she is also a Tantra teacher and expert, and she teaches in high schools to youth and to children about sexuality and their development and growth. So thank you so much to both of you for joining us. And yeah, we can start from here, and maybe you can share what do you feel, what is self-love for you, as our topic and subject is on self-love and worth. So let's just hear out that what self-love is and how does it contribute together in healthy sexuality. Would you like to start, Ria?
Sure. So, from my recent experiences, what I was finding out when it comes to self love, for me, self love is the meeting, is where I'm meeting myself. And it doesn't matter how I meet myself, it doesn't matter what I meet there, because it's not a it's not a big thing to love yourself when you're all beautiful and laughing and having all the success. Then of course we're going to love ourselves because we feel amazing. The thing is how to love oneself when it comes to the all darkness and all the dirt and all the shit that is inside of us. And this is why I'm saying that it doesn't matter what you meet inside of you. It's just the fact that you are willing to meet yourself, that you're doing the practices where you get to know yourself better, even if it's all the worst that can come out of you. It's still the potential and it's a gesture of self-love because you are willing to get to know yourself. And when you're willing to do it, and when you're feeling yes, in touch, when you're getting to be in touch with all these pieces inside of you, not only the nice ones but also the horrible ones, and then you're able to still sit and look at that and honor it and love it and um, have everything that comes to you but still be able to meet it. This is the self-love for me.
Thank you, James. Would you like to add and maybe also throw a little perspective from sexuality point of view? Why is it necessary to cultivate self-love and worth, and how it is interconnected and weave together?
Yeah, well, it's a big topic. So I think it's an interesting question because you could have so many different answers. And to really see it, it's like, well, we need to think what is the self to start off with and what is love? Because we take those things for granted that we think we know what those things are. So I would say that self-love is a journey, and it's a journey that lasts a lifetime. It's not something that you just read a book or go to a workshop and suddenly you've got self-love and it's great and you add it as a new badge onto your jacket. This is an ongoing inquiry, because as you delve into this, and I'll speak a bit more about this later, like you really start to have to look at what the self is. And there's many different stages of that. There's stages of self-love. Some might be more on the circumference, but actually as you go deeper and deeper in, the self begins to disappear. So what is really there? What is love? And then love is emerging. So you can actually see that very often the image, and we'll speak about this around narcissism, can get in the way of self-love. We can have a wrong idea about this. So I think it's really important to start with where you're at. And for many people, they aren't in an enlightened space where the self has disappeared and they're just merged in that loving consciousness. So it's an onward growth, and it's maybe the journey of our whole life, because so many of our actions, so many of our ambitions, so much of what we're doing in the world is actually motivated by our conditioning and perhaps our sense of lack, perhaps our sense that we are unlovable. So it's an onward continuing journey. So that's why it is important to be looking at this and to be practicing this and to be going deeper into the self and into this love, because really it's the journey of life. It's actually the deepest motivation. It might be the core wound for everyone, that we don't feel loved, we don't feel welcomed, we don't feel worthy, and that we're faking it, that we have to be somebody. You know, this crazy idea, like we're already here, but like everyone's kind of like trying their best to be someone.
Yes,
So
but
it's a mad motivation.
yes, exactly what you're saying, that somehow the whole collective energy is made in such a way that you want to be somebody or someone, or to be also somewhere. So how do you think is, you know, people can really stay authentic to their own true gifts, what maybe they were born with? Or so what could you say as tips, you know, as a daily practice, as a daily self-love practice, maybe what can people do?
Yeah, so I think you start where you are, and the body is a great place to begin with, because the body lives in the present, whereas the ego and the kind of image self is living in the past or in the future. It's living in ambition. So to come to the body comes to the present, and it's only then we can actually start to hear the impulses of our gifts, like the instincts and the impulses that want to emerge through us, that are core to our being, that haven't been given to us from outside, from conditioning, from other people, from expectations, trying to prove ourselves to our parents or our friends, trying to be that somebody. So then I think the first thing is the meditation. It is coming into the present. And so we can perhaps begin by touching the body, touching the circumference of that, feeling the physical form, allowing for the pleasure. Caress in the body releases oxytocin, it releases hormones that actually help us to relax that nervous system that's always on alert to try and prove itself. And from that relaxation, we can actually start to give those messages deeper into the cells. It's not just about pleasuring and rubbing and titillation. We can actually start to find deeper ways to touch ourselves that go deeper than just the form, the outer form, but actually start to touch all the way into the soul, and start to touch and gently wake up those impulses, those authentic gifts that want to emerge. So I think it's a great place to start with touch, but allow that touch to go deeper. Allow yourself to feel your emotions you touch, allow yourself to cry, allow yourself to be touched, as we would say in English. You're touched by things. So you really start to make that connection with a deeper part of yourself that isn't in that busy, proving itself mind, that you check in with that. I think doing that every day, like I'm speaking to myself here, is such a good practice to start settling into this life and start to really allow those impulses to emerge. So that would be, for me, a good practice to begin.
Beautifully shared. Riya, would you like to add something to, what is your self practice to self love?
Well, for sure, I agree with James and what he said, and how incredibly nourishing it is, but also how actually things can arise from something that we really are scared of, which is called nothingness. So once you're able to get through these layers, as James was saying, as we're touching ourselves, as we're really giving ourselves an attention to our body, to what is happening, then we get to this place of nothingness. And we are taught that nothingness is not good, because we always, as James said, we have to be something, we have to do something, because that means that we exist. It's a proof that we are alive. But the fact is that the biggest gifts, the most incredible ideas are coming from zero, from nothingness, not from the busy mind that is having a very strong process about ideas and stuff like that. No, actually it's the nothingness. And what I would add here, especially for women, because meditation is beautiful practice, and it's feeding a lot of masculine energy presence, I would definitely add a practice around emotions, because very often people find it really hard to just sit straight away. So sometimes it's good to do some movement practice beforehand, whether it's expressing the emotions or a dance or shaking or whatever that is, because then it's easier to find this peace inside and to get into the meditation. And also it's easier to get in touch what's actually alive inside, because we're kind of shaking out the mind, and we're more able to, again, to meet ourselves. And this is why it's such an incredible practice and such a beautiful thing, because again, we're meeting ourselves. And this is the journey. This is the journey to keep meeting, to keep going on a date with yourself, and giving yourself things that you would give to your dream lover, to your dream partner.
Thank you, Ria. As you brought up this, subject of nothingness and spending time with yourself, people, and especially now, in Corona time, in COVID-19 time, it was very challenging, maybe for some people who were locked down alone in the house, and especially in Western countries, I know this could be the scenario. So how to really take a leap from loneliness to enjoying your aloneness, because I feel that's also a very important step in creating self-love and enjoying your own company.
Well, for me, everything that appears inside of me, as I said at the beginning, is an act of self-love. And whether it's pleasant or unpleasant what we meet, it is something to be embraced, because once we embrace it, we are growing. And we are also able not to realize that we are not it, that we are bigger than the emotions or whatever the sensations are coming. So when you ask me about loneliness, it's another piece inside of me to be met and to be embraced and to be loved, and to just check how it is, what it creates for me, what happens in my body, what happens, what is the longing, what is the need, what is the memory, maybe. Like, it is all, if you put this magnificent quality of curiosity, then everything becomes like a exploration with so much excitement. And then you can meet loneliness, you can meet all the other abandonment or other things, and you can explore it with this quality of curiosity, and it becomes a journey, as James said at the beginning. So when you ask me about what happens, and it's very common just now that the loneliness is appearing, it's perfect. It's a perfect thing. It's a beautiful meeting. It's another date with yourself.
Thank you, Riya. And as you touched upon emotions for women, and sometimes it could be very overpowering. So, what kind of practice maybe you can suggest on a daily basis that women or men both can practice to navigate through emotions during these and every other time also?
For me, I have many practices because emotions are strong, they are energy, and it needs to be moved, it needs to be acknowledged. So obviously the best way to attract emotions is to get rid of them, trying to get rid of them. So for my recent practice, and what normally works for me, is to dance the emotion, is to dance whatever is happening inside of me, and then I'm becoming it. And it's like I'm putting a certain music, whether it's anxiety or frustration or whatever that is, and then I'm just allowing, not to dance with it, just to dance it as I am it. So it's like, it's a beautiful practice to actually allow this energy to move through you, and just to see what will happen next. So the dance is the biggest teacher for me just now, and the movement, and it's really beautiful practice.
Yes, it brings a smile on my face, because that's also what I like to do when I'm overpowered with emotions. And dancing is a one way for me to connect and feel joy in my own self and body and everything. James, would you like to add something on emotions and self-love practice? Because
Well,
emotion.
I'm curious, like maybe with a hand raised, like who has been lonely recently in this COVID-19 thing, just to see, because
Yes,
I'm
that's
going to
good.
flick through people's screens. Because
So maybe
I
they
think the
can.
power, yeah, I have been. I think it's true for many of us, and I think um, part of the power is in admitting it, because there can be such a shame around this. Part of it, the vulnerability, is to acknowledge that, wow, like I felt very isolated in these times, and people have really struggled. So um, it's almost like we've been on a collective, what's known as a vision quest. We actually take people on these journeys where they go out into the woods and they stay for 4 days and 4 nights, completely by themselves, without phones, without food, without any distractions. And it forces them to kind of look and to face themselves. And I think that we've all been through that as a collective. And it's brought up a lot of emotions, as Ria says. It's brought up so much, but it does feel like it's a collective journey happening here. It's part of a collective awakening. So we're seeing a lot of separation in the world. We're seeing like all the kind of separation being very highlighted. It's not that it suddenly appeared, it's been brought to the surface. So we're in a collective process just now. And I think that self-care and that self-love is super important just now, to remember that we're not alone. So when we see that other people raising their hands, we realize, wow, it's not just me. We're all moving through this. It's okay. It kind of gives some sense of support. Um, and so I think Ria encapsulated it beautifully with the emotions to move through that. It was one of the main techniques of Osho was to first allow some movement, to allow some dance, to allow singing, to allow any kind of activity uh, which brings you into the present, and then for the in part, afterwards the meditation, because then the meditation happens by itself, and then there's a relaxation. So we're working with the nervous system though. So a lot of people's nervous systems are on edge. So that expression in whatever way we can do, just even if it's small, but even if we feel tired and lethargic and what's the point, just say 5 minutes. I'm just going to put on 5 minutes and I'm going to dance. Or I'm going to get onto the carpet on my floor and just allow my body to move wherever it wants to be. Maybe it wants to come into a shape that's kind of like gnarly and twisted and deformed, and just to allow the body to play out what might be our reality inside. And you'll notice that it changes. It will pass. Whatever thing we thought was taking our whole attention was so strong we have to fight, it changes within a few minutes if you really allow it. So allow yourself to move to the center, and I'll just allow all those things just to play out naturally without getting too absorbed or caught in or hooked on them.
Thank you so much. You really, yeah, encapsulated both of you very beautifully. And from what I understand also is meditation is the key, you know, to connect to our core and to navigate through these emotions or self-doubts. And yeah, how do you say, and Riya, maybe I can direct this question on you, that parents can cultivate self-love in children while growing up? Because in today's time, children are really influenced a lot with media, whether it is any kind of social media, Tinder, Instagram, TV, movies. There is always something to capture their attention, and they learn so much from there. So what parents can do their part over here? Or what do you do with your two daughters?
Yeah, I think this will be the most honest answer. What I've learned is that children don't learn from what we tell them. They don't learn for what we explain to them. They learn from what they see, what they observe. They learn from the example of who we are. So most of the things that happens are very often a mirror for us. So when I started seeing my children with the phone and it started bothering me, it was really a trigger for me. Why are they on their phones all the time? And then one day my daughter told me directly, it's like, you're on the phone all the time. That's simple as that, you know? So, and it regards to everything. So for me, as much as I love being with the youths and doing the lectures for them, me and James are doing more like vision quest for youths as well. But ultimately, it's like if we want to learn our children anything, teach our children anything, then we start with ourselves. Because if I don't love myself, my children will mirror it back to me. And then if I try to change my kid and without trying to change what would I do, what I could do to bring something into, to show them, to give them the example, because we are like gods for them, especially until the 10-year-old or something. It's like we are their whole world. And then there is a huge crisis after the 10-year-old because they are becoming teenagers and they are finding out and realizing that there is more worlds around than just the parents. And then we don't have so much influence on our children. We can only see and watch and observe. And then getting back to ourselves. So if we want to teach our children self-love, The answer is very simple. Let's practice it ourselves. And there is nothing more than that. And as they see, they will do it because they will just naturally want to do it. And about yes, the games and the Instagram and all the social media, I've been having a lot of thoughts around that and what to do, because it does concern me very, very much. And I know how many parents are being concerned about that and how much impact the world of YouTube or Instagram has on our children. And the fact is, the truth is that we cannot stop it. It is happening. Like, we can put all the blockages on YouTube. We can tell them that they are not allowed to do this or that or that. But like, at some point, it's like with energy. Like, once we try to block something, it will just explode at some point. So there are many ways to navigate to. So for me, I have schedules, so they know that they can use their phone for this amount of time, and putting some strategy, some structure into using these kind of things like games or social media. This is how I'm dealing with it. Putting a little bit of structure and a little bit of and also alternative, giving them what can they do alternatively. This is also very precious. So let's not tell them what they cannot do, like you cannot sit on games. Let's tell them what they can do. So instead of telling them stop playing, tell them let's start doing something else. Let's dance, let's speak, let's draw, you know, just to give them alternative as a positive sentence, not the negative one.
Yes. Parents, I hope you're listening, that you have to be your own example for the children and find the alternate. Don't try to yeah, don't try to pass the back, or it's children's task and responsibility. Okay, James, would you like to add something to this, or
Well, I think Ria is the expert with children, and I think that's really good points that she made there.
yes.
Maybe I could comment a little bit on like what that brings up, all the social media thing, and what that's doing to the collective in this way. Because you asked me before about narcissism, like what's the difference between kind of pride and narcissism and self-love.
Yes.
So I think it's an interesting topic, and like the word narcissism comes from this Greek myth of Narcissus, who was he fell in love with his own image in a pond, in a pool of water, and then became almost schizophrenic. So he was falling in love with the false, with the reflection, and this is a real crisis that I see coming in the collective. We're moving into we've been in a modern crisis, and I think they will pass. And the next ones will be postmodernism, and part of postmodernism is this place where the ego gets to hang out, and it's a lot of narcissism. It's being fed by social media. It's been fed by Instagram, where it literally is that you have your reflected mirror in your hand, and you're falling in love with your image and trying to project this image out to the whole world with all the filters and all the things in it, so people believe this story about yourself. Because we think that love is out there. We think that if we can convince other people, we feel such a lack inside that maybe if we can convince them and they love us and they'll reflect that back to us, then we're lovable. But it's always fake. It's not the real love. It's this self-image is like a mask. That's what we would kind of call ego. And it's a very different thing from the natural celebration of impulses and instincts as they arise through the body. This is like a kind of demon that you need to keep feeding in order for it to survive. You keep needing the approval. You keep needing the likes, you keep needing the followers, whatever it is, to keep this beast alive. So it will never really be satisfied. It will stay there, and it will prevent you from actually reaching deeper into the authentic love, the authentic impulses, the authentic self. Because when you start looking in, that image and love can't exist together. Love is a dissolving. So while we're trying to prop up this thing, it gets in the way of actually allowing this dissolving. Osho said that love and the self can't actually exist together. The self begins to dissolve as you come into the presence. As you look to see what's there, you'll find that it is really nothing. But we're playing this incredible game of trying to prove this something, and it will take over our lives. It's unconscious. It's not that it's someone's fault. We'll all do it. I'll raise my hand again. It's part of the cultural conditioning, and I don't even think we can get away with it. I think it's part of the growth of life, to go through this process, to be so hooked on this thing, to eventually come to the place where we realize it doesn't even really matter. It's not even really real. When we become present, we just see it's just all been a big dream. It's been an American dream. It's been a game. We fell asleep and we got really fascinated with this thing. And then we wake up and we see that, wow, what was I doing? Why was I trying so hard, struggling, falling over myself to prove this ridiculous notion? So we can't avoid it, but I think we can become aware of it and we can start to play the game. So we can do it consciously. So even as we're on social media and doing these things, just to realize like this isn't real. Like wake up, look at your hands, touch yourself, double check. What am I really doing this from? Am I doing this from like a overflowing sense of joy, or is there something else motivating me? So I think this is a really important question for us all to ask ourselves. I ask it to myself a lot. I see it in myself. There's no shame in it. We all have this false image, but we can start to gently dissolve it. And as we do so, we'll come to love. That will be more self-love there. That's where it will begin.
Thank you. You really very beautifully said and highlighted this topic on self-image, because we are all so busy in portraying the self-image in outside world, that this is how we should be portrayed or taken, and we are just occupied in making that self-image and not really looking inside. So thank you for bringing that point. And yeah,
Can I add something to it, actually?
please.
Because I think it's something that's really, you're talking about self-worth, and I think there's a huge crisis in that, because in this kind of like next generation millennials, then there's been this thing which looks on the surface like it's self-love. It's about value and worth. And children being told they're just amazing at everything. It's the best thing ever. They're being put on these incredible pedestals until they get into the world and realize they're just human as everyone else. And then they see on Facebook everyone putting their best image, including themselves. And we know inside that it's fake. We know that we're faking it. And so there becomes this cognitive dissonance. Everyone else sees the best of everyone else, and everyone feels like they're not really living up to it. So I think this is going to be a really difficult period as we collectively find a way to navigate that. So maybe that's something around children. How do we help them become aware of that? Like what they see online is not so real. Like all the fake, airbrushed, all the images that we feel we're meant to live up to. So maybe there's something in that as well.
Yes, and that brings a very important question, around this topic, because a lot of young girls now seeing media, there is a lot of self-obsession with the bodies. So it has to look perfect breast size, the most maybe skimpiest clothes, because this is what is the statement of being sexy in maybe today's time, and especially for young girls I'm talking about. And this, I feel like even a 7-year-old girl, they're getting too quick, you know, like looking like a 14-year-old. So the innocence is losing too fast. So Riya, would you like to talk on this question, to address it?
Well, it's sad to say, but this is exactly what's happening. And well, I've been noticing how it's also changing, because obviously the whole fashion world got into such an extreme that there are more and more fashion shows with models plus, and there are more and more something called body positive movements, and I see a lot of that, and it's really beautiful. And actually we've been speaking recently about what would happen if that changes, because then all the makeup companies would bankrupt, you know. If we really make children and teenagers realize that they don't have to do all that, then so many companies would go into bankruptcy, because no one would be using all these perfumes or all these mascaras, all these other things, you know. So, and all the models would lose their jobs, and so forth and so forth. But it's been really depressing almost to see and watch what is happening and how far it went with this idea of how we should be looking like, of our shapes. And so many women that I work with are just so depressed only from watching Instagram or Facebook, because, for example, they just gave birth and they don't have time to have shower, they don't have time to clean, and then they see the photos of these perfect mothers with their perfect children and everything looks so lovely, and they are getting into depression. And recently I heard about 2 women who actually took their lives, committed a suicide, because they couldn't handle it. They thought that they are doing something wrong. So as James said, it's a tremendous crisis. And I see that these things are happening, so they shake us, and so they show us that what is the real problem here and how we can change it. So as I said, there are a lot of activists who are talking about it and who are bringing the consciousness to that. And as you were asking before about the connection between sexuality also, because this is also something that comes so much faster than it used to years ago, that the young girls and young boys are starting their sexual life also earlier, and so forth. And I was thinking that about this metaphor, that when we, as James was saying, that when we're looking at the photo outside, photo of us, or making a selfie, and it's like taking this and following the likes, how many likes are there, and this is what creates self-love for us, because it's a proof that we are loved. Then it's like the same with pornography or other things in sexuality, where we don't find pleasure actually in this, but we find pleasure on something that is outside of us. And this is, we are getting addicted simply because it's like we find out that once something is taken away from us, we're missing it, and then we need a substitute for that. So it is all very linked, as you were saying, and it is again coming back here, as James was saying beautifully, that we need to come back here and find it here, because this is what's present, and this is the only thing that we can actually rely on.
Yes,
Mm.
yes. Um, yeah, because I see that in people, there's always this hoarding, like of not being good enough, or having all these self doubts and looking for affirmations in, other people's eyes. Do you think it also comes from our, yeah, for sure, it comes from also our childhood wounds? So, and the journey is probably a bit long to heal on, but yes, there's always a first step. And what do you have to say on this self doubts and looking for affirmations outside and feeling not good enough? Is how to come back, how to come back to self love.
Okay, I can speak. I think that's the thing, is to see that we're not alone, because that's the part of the illusion of like how the world is created. We take those messages from Facebook, from the media, or from the culture around, and it's to find others, to vulnerably admit it ourselves, like I'm not happy with my body or this thing and that, and to find other people. Like, great thing is men and women circles, I feel, because they really often allow us to be more vulnerable and to say things that we might not just say, um, in larger public circles. So I think being there and kind of having some people who have the courage give permission to other people to start to admit, like, yeah, I feel this way. It doesn't look how it's meant to look. Like, there was this incredible art piece, which was this wall of yonis. It was like vagina. Um, and so they had casts of all of them kind of put up. And many women were seeing these and had all the different shapes and lips that were kind of like different sizes and not symmetrical. And so many people had just, women had had this trauma or this self-worth thing around their own yoni because they'd seen it in other women's yonis in porn, and it's meant to look a very specific way like this. And they suddenly realize, I'm not alone. God, there's a whole variety, and it's natural and it's okay. So I think the more we can start to give permission for each other to go deeper than the surface, because it really is just the surface, and we've become lost in the surface. We've been so distracted, as Rio was saying, how much time is being spent on this, trying to look this way and trying to prove ourselves. It's a huge distraction. That's the shame of it, because there's so much more. There's so much more when we fall in love with someone else. Maybe at first we're attracted to the surface, but as time goes on, it's not just about that. It's the whole depth of emotions and currents and feelings that we perceive in the other, and that becomes more important rather than whether the eyes are perfectly aligned or their face is symmetrical. And so then we can give that permission to ourselves to see, like, what is really important here. The word important comes from what you can take from one life to another, what you can import. And this is going to go for all of us. We're going to have this journey of death. All of us, there's no escaping it. It is going to get old. It is going to get wrinkled. It's going to be eaten by worms eventually or set on fire. So, like, don't waste too much time on it. It's temporary. So what is eternal?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, James, for outlining this. And it's very important that we realize that this everything is just gonna go away in a click away, probably. And this time, in fact, Corona time made us realize that. And yeah, and even the poem "Thank You Coronavirus," which Riya wrote, is talking about this. So yes, let's move on to, as you already brought in your conversation, this point on how, girls when growing up, or boys when growing up, you to see that, oh yes, all yonis could be different. What parents should teach children about their bodies? Because as our summit title is sex education, So what parents can teach about bodies, about sex education to their children, which I remember, you know, as growing up, I used to always see myself and I used to feel, how is other women's, you know, breast or yoni, you know, there's always this curiosity, but you can't really, because the world is so conservative and made in such a way. So what kind of awareness parents can give to their children around their bodies and sexuality? Riya, would you like to answer? Yes, please.
Yes, well, for sure, there are a few aspects on that. For sure, as I was saying, like everything that we have, we didn't work out in ourselves, the children will show us. So if we feel shame around our bodies and we don't like being naked, then of course our children will either, because this is tricky one, they will either be naked all the time and they wouldn't you know, they wouldn't want to wear anything, just to trigger us very strongly and just to show us, you see, this is what the body looks like and that's okay. So obviously it gives us opportunity again to look at something in us. Or other way around, we are so, let's say, opened and we want maybe too strongly to push them, and then they will do something opposite for sure. What is very important with children is that it is much more difficult to, and this is what I'm hearing also from the youth that I'm working with, although their parents are cool and very open, they still have a shame around speaking with their parents around sexuality or their experiences. So this is why it's so crucial to do the sex education, sexual educations in schools, to give them space to explore and to share and to just be able to express whatever they need to express or ask the questions that they need to ask. But for sure, the questions that are happening at the beginning when children are really small and they don't have shame yet, it's just, it comes naturally, or how they are naturally, very often children like 2-year-old or 3-year-old, they are just touching, playing with their genitals. And what is normally happening is their parents are like, don't touch it, or don't do it in front of other people, or you cannot do it, like whatever the reaction is. Or even if they don't say anything, there is a contraction and the children are feeling it. So this shame is slowly growing. And again, this is why it is so important, because it's natural. Shame is natural and we all have it. And James mentioned it also, that we have shame around feeling lonely. We have shame around feeling that our body is not nice, that our vagina or penis is not good enough or doesn't look perfectly. Shame is natural. The thing is to be aware of where we are actually shaming our children in a very subconscious way. So we can even shame our children by saying, don't cry. Why are you crying? So it starts again with the emotions, because once we say a sentence like that, they immediately will feel that there is something wrong with them. And being aware of where we can stop shaming them and allowing all the expression they need, then they can feel more safe with us. They can feel more trust that they are okay, that they will not be judged by us, that they will not be shamed by us. And this might open the field for a conversation between the parents and the children or teenagers.
Thanks, Riya. James, would you like to add also something to this?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Ria said is perfect there. I'm curious why that makes sense for me, that actually children would prefer to do this with other people other than their parents. And I wonder if that's part of that is because their parents, they want to be want their children to stay the same. They don't want them to grow up. You know, I think there's an unconscious thing. You want to keep them at that age. So I wonder if that's the thing, that children don't want to show that growing up to their parents in that way. They feel slightly ashamed of it. And I don't know what you can do about that. But one thing around the sexuality, but also the body in general, I think gratitude is such an important tool and gift, because it shifts our whole perception. When we're feeling like there's something wrong with the body image, to come back to that again, when we actually start to feel like, well, what are my eyes? What does this body give me? Like, it's carried me through the whole day. Like, if I was to take away my eyes or my hearing or a sense and to play with that and to see how that is in the world, then when I get it back again, I've got so much gratitude. This allows me to experience the world in this way, and it shifts our perception of like, was this thing not being quite good enough that we need to force at the gym and do all these things to get just right? And it starts to allow us to feel like, wow, these arms, these hands have done this for me today. They've helped this experience happen. These legs have carried me this place. I've seen this. I've smelt those things. So delighting in the senses is such an important thing. And to have gratitude, to actually take a moment to feel, to turn it around and to feel like, what has it done for me? Maybe I've got a big belly, but this belly has looked after me today, and it's digested this food, and it's, you know, it's comfortable and it's nice to rub. And so to find the things that we can appreciate and we can find gratitude is a great tool.
And this reminds me of the beautiful practice that we do on the Awaken as Love training. I think that is called the poem that we write to ourselves.
Mm.
We can actually write a poem to ourselves with this gratitude, expressing what is so incredible and so magnificent about you. What are you grateful for? In these hands, these shoulders, these hair, like everything that you can actually find and see as incredible, and what you're grateful for.
So probably it's time for our listeners to write a poem to themselves tonight, huh? Or today after this session, write a love letter to yourself. Just tell in that love letter what you love about yourself. What is it that you really admire and adore yourself? Please. Thank you so much, Riya, for sharing this. And I like to come to porn addiction and pornography, which has a huge impact now on our youth, and it is really beyond our imagination, beyond even we don't know that how much it has an impact. So what would you like to say on pornography addiction, what men can do, because it's most common in men to be addicted to porn, I would say. So James, I mean, something would you like to say on porn addiction for men, and what can they do? And there was a question from yesterday, which I would like to maybe take it up also. Here is a man asked that, is it okay to watch sometimes porn or selective porn or classy porn? So what would you like to say on this?
Yeah, I think it's a big topic, and there's a whole neurological thing that goes along with it, that Ria touched on it before, that it actually takes the whole experience away from the body. So we become less and less sensitive in our body, and actually porn is more becomes sex in the brain. It's a lot of neurochemicals, it's dopamine, and it has those same addictive qualities. It releases a whole cycle of hormones, just similar to cocaine, similar to other addictive substances. And so we're training ourselves to be addicts with it. So one of the people who did really great work with this was called Joseph Kramer, who lived in New York, and he was helping people with that porn addiction. And he said, like, well, one of the first things you can do is, like, if your habit is to be hunched over a computer and scrunched up, and you're touching one part of the body, furiously stimulating it to have that release, then, like, it takes small steps. Maybe watch the same thing, but stand up, move your body, dance. Still, if it's too big a leap to kind of go cold turkey and cut it out completely, just change it so the body becomes more involved. So you start breathing with it. So you start becoming more present with it. So it doesn't just become this kind of like train of hormones that pushes you down this route, and then you kind of wake up at the end of it ashamed and ejaculated. It's you start to bring more consciousness in just by changing the habits a little bit, slowly. And that can then come gradually towards a self-pleasure practice. So the porn level is very on the surface. It's simply about stimulating ourselves through images and stimulating nerve endings. And we can take that into self-pleasure, where we can actually start to wake up more of the body. So we do this in Awaken as Love. We can move this more into self-pleasure, where we actually spread the energy of sexuality and pleasure, not just in the genitals in a contracted, small, limited space, but it starts to become more of the whole body. Breath is involved, maybe sound, maybe when people have been watching porn in their parents' house when they were children, where they learned it, they had to be quiet and in the bathroom or shut down in some way so no one would hear them. So expressing and finding the pleasure in all of the skin. The skin is a whole sexual organ. So finding that through the whole body, finding how we can move, how we can dance with it, it starts to retrain the nervous system, which has been trained to kind of go along this certain path. It starts to give more possibilities. And self-pleasure is just the start of it, actually. There's a lot of this happening in the Tantra scene. It's a very healthy thing, but the next step is self-love, because pleasure is still on the surface of this. It's a doorway in. Osho said it's you go from sex to superconsciousness. So sex is the seed, so it's the way in, but deeper than just that pleasure is what we mentioned before, is that love. It's like, actually, how am I just touching to stimulate, or am I actually giving messages into the cells of my body that I'm loved, continue, you're worthy, to really be able to touch into that soul, to really start to find that love inside of ourselves. So I think there's a whole journey there. I think it definitely is probably more with men, although I have heard of it with women as well. And there is a thing about masturbation in women, whether it's using porn or not, but still kind of localized, intense, and contracted. And how can we just make that a kind of open, breathing experience, this opening to the world, rather than contracting into some peak experience.
Riya, would you like to say something on porn addiction? And
well, the first and most important thing is that it's an addiction. When it's an addiction, actually, it's a serious thing. It's a serious problem. And when there is an alcohol addiction or drug addiction, you actually go on detox. You go through the whole program. So pornography is exactly same as everything else that we can be addicted to. And it is very dangerous, first of all. And second of all, it also requires a lot of attention and conscious work, because it's also, once we are so addicted, it's our habit. It is really difficult to break our habits. And this requires, as I said, a lot of consciousness, a lot of also slowness, patience, and willingness to change it. So when it comes to porn addiction in terms of grown-ups, like for me personally, I think there should be exactly like with alcoholics, like there should be a 12 steps program, maybe a tantric program, or whatever it is, to help these people, because there are, I don't know, I think it's 80% of society that is addicted to pornography. Like it's really a huge amount, and we don't know about it because people obviously don't say about it. But we work a lot with people, and it's a very common thing. When it comes to children and to youth, it's for me personally, I had it also with my teenagers. They brought it from school. They were like 9 and 6 back then, so they were really small, and I was terrified. And then when I went underneath, like I went through the process, what it brings for me, because obviously as a parent, it's heartbreaking sometimes almost. When I managed to go through that fear and what it brings for me and what is the need that I have around it for my children, I actually connected with my 10-year-old, with the 10-year-old inside of me that had this longing. It wasn't necessarily longing for pornography, but some kind of stimulation. And what I was personally doing as a kid was that I was watching these, let's say, semi-erotic movies like Dirty Dancing, where there was a lot of beautiful, beautiful and tasty erotism. There were movies like that were kind of giving me that need, and it wasn't necessarily about me masturbating. It was about the sensation. So what we did in our school, where the children brought pornography, we gave them alternative. So again, we didn't tell them you cannot do that, because that brings a lot of contraction and blockage, and for children it's the best way to hear that they will do it and push to do it. It's the alternative. So we actually gave them these kind of movies. We created the whole list for children, for youths, that they can watch in order to fulfill and meet this need of stimulation. And then it just gives a trigger for the body to feel this little bit of pleasure, this little bit of excitement. And this is how you can find it inside of you, instead of like being really turned on and horny on the pornography. It made a huge difference for us.
Yeah,
I
thank
love
you.
that, Rio, because like actually we all have our inner children, and it's really just as you said, like we cannot say to our inner children for ourselves, like you shouldn't do this, and we start to shame ourselves. I feel that bringing in awareness is the only meditation that's really needed. It works with all addictions. So it's not that we have to suddenly stop. We can do the same thing, but become conscious of it. And actually it starts to become hysterical. As I'm looking back when I was younger and kind of in pornography, I remember those times where I started to do that. I started to witness it. And I burst out laughing because it's this mad compulsion, this crazy masturbation and this furious thing to have this release at the end. And actually the whole thing was hysterical. So we can kind of celebrate. If we make it wrong, we repress it and it grows in the darkness. So you can't just cut it, but you can become conscious of it. You can become aware on it. So I really like what Riya said, and it made me feel that actually it's not just for those children, it's also for our inner children as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think what Riya said, that it's best to give alternatives, rather than saying not doing it. So, and thanks, Riya. I think we need a tantra program for children or on porn addiction. So this could be a very interesting subject and topic to work on. James, last question, as I see we are taking time and it's time to take questions also from our audience. So how do you see making space for children to come with their parents in Tantra festivals you organized or Awaken as Love trainings? How children can receive Tantra while growing up, before 18?
Yeah, well, it's a delicate situation because we have to be aware of the culture that we live in, and the culture is not quite ready for that yet. We're doing great work with the festivals that as we do more and more of those, then that ripples out into the culture and changes the culture. And then, but at the moment, there's a huge thing around pedophilia, around inappropriate sexuality. And so we have to be kind of aware of that. Like I can imagine in the Daily Mail or one of the Sun newspaper, like cult sexualizes children in whatever, you know. However, because Tantra is seen as sex in the West at the moment. However, Tantra is so much more than simply sexuality. It's a whole system of awakening. And so I think there could be steps towards it. I think parents should actually actively get involved because there's issues with childcare, there's issues with certain venues. So for them to proactively, if they're coming with children, to maybe take turns to look after the children or to put on workshops. I feel things like the senses are fantastic ways for children to explore Tantra. And to explore these aspects without there being an inappropriate situation. So I think there can be separate workshops for children. I think there can be workshops with children and the 5 elements and adults together. But they need to be designed in a way that's really sensitive. And the perception in the culture might be there soon, but it's still a really delicate situation. And I say that as an organizer, just being aware of these things. So I'd love to see it. I think it's easier with other spiritual festivals. I think Tantra will be one of the last ones to really to be able to do that. But we'll be creating a festival together, and you'll be bringing your child, so it might be the Sadhapik Shrishti.
Yes, we had been planning during the New Year in December, Tantra Festival in Goa, which has to be cancelled because of the COVID situation. Yeah. But yes, something I would definitely like to work together on this, that how we can create much more conscious space for children or for parents to come together with children, but still they feel protected, and yeah, they can also have some their personal space. Thank you. Just last quick fun thing I would like to do with both of you is our rapid fire round, and then we can take the questions from our audience. I already see there are few questions down on the screen. So yes, I'll just say one word and just quickly whatever comes to your mind, just say it. Yes. I start now. Sex. Anybody
Yummy.
can say. Sex.
I missed it. Any sex?
Okay, sex.
Yeah, sure.
Relationships.
Deepening.
Growth.
Open relationships.
Experimenting.
Experiment.
Sex education.
Yes.
Necessary.
Tantra.
Grounding.
It needs.
Also.
Master.
Funny guy.
Awaken as love.
Yes, please.
Evolution.
Evolved beings.
Also evolution.
I didn't get you, Riya, sorry.
Mohini.
Thank you so much. Let's take the questions and move over. Thank you. Let's take the questions from our audience. Thank you. Thank you for listening us, and thank you for such great inputs, insight, and wisdom, Priya and James. And let's continue. Thank you so much. We have some bubbling questions here, and I'll start a little bit from the top. How do we get children to distinguish between real life and the online fantasy world and not build their self-worth based on it? We pretty much took up this question, but if you like to quickly address it.
I can answer that. It's again, for me, it's about communication. It's about authenticity. It's about putting it on the table. Like when I, as a parent, when I don't know what to do, I genuinely go to my children and I actually tell them what my problem is. I tell them, listen, what I'm observing is this situation that is here on Instagram and the situation that it brings and the problems that it brings. And I'm aware of that as a grown. You are not aware of that because you are teenagers. And I really struggle because I don't know how can I pass it on to you. So I'm just being authentic. And then it brings curiosity. Then they don't feel like I'm trying to tell them something or make them wrong or change them. I'm just bringing curiosity, which is, as I said before, it's such a beautiful quality that changes the perspective a little bit, because then we can explore it. My children also very often ask me, also we speak about food, about conscious food, about obviously conscious sexuality and other things. And we are just, I'm not trying to be on the pedestal where I'm telling them because I know. It's more like we're exploring it. And I have a sense that this is what makes them feel a little bit more safe and a little bit on the same level, that I'm not looking down on them or something. I'm just exploring with them, and that makes them more open. And that actually makes them, it starts the process inside of them, what it is. They start analyzing it, they start tuning in, they start noticing. Then after a week or 2 weeks or months, they're coming back to me and they are telling, wow, I noticed this or that. So it is like a domino effect. It does really work. So this is my way of handling these difficult subjects, because honestly, like, I really don't know. Like, I have no idea. This is a new generation that is being raised like that. I have no idea what the consequences will be. I can imagine they are wrong, but it's like, I don't know. And I don't know what will work because no one tested it before. So the only thing I can do is actually admit that I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to pass it on to them. This is what my intuition tells me. This is what my experience tells me. And I'm just putting it on the table.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much, yeah, I feel answer it. And again, it's the responsibility also of parents, how much we are watching the TV again and being on phone. So that's what children learn, seeing the parents. We are their idols, we are their gods, as also Riya said it before, and until 10 years of age. We have another question, which is asking on the books you can recommend. Just please list some books for sexual awareness for teens. So I can add to this. This message is sent to me privately, so maybe you can't read it. Joyla, you can also watch our yesterday evening session, which is from Culture Reframed. They especially work on teens and tweens. Plus, we have another session on the last day on 14th with Lyle Stone from Australia, and she works and has programs for parents with teens and tweens. So yes, you can also refer these programs. And apart from this, Riya, maybe you would like to list some books, do you know? Which is on sexual awareness specifically for
for teens. I'm
Yeah.
working on.
Yes.
I never seen any book for teens that I can actually recommend. And yeah, it's a pity. Maybe someone knows it. I never heard about any of those. I read some and I don't recommend them.
Yes, I think it's more for parents. They can learn and then they can share it with their children. Yeah.
Probably, but there are a lot of books for also again for children, for parents around children, and that might include like things like how to speak to children to be heard, how to approach them, and so forth. So maybe that's a direction.
You have a lot of YouTube videos on this as well, educating about the youth, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you shared the link or would you like us to? Yeah, we
I
can share.
started typing the name of the man who is really great in writing books for parents. So I'm gonna just type it in, and then I will paste the link for my YouTube channel. But
Yes, for
yeah, I will do it in a moment.
sure. Just for Jewel, Ria has typed it here in case I just read it out for our other audience and viewers for the book for teens. And somebody also has written book for teens, Cool, Sexy, Relaxed, Love by Tantra teacher Wendy Almasta Dolman. Cool Sex. Okay, thank you for sharing. Yeah. How to address these topics to people of special needs. Asma has asked how to address these topics. What topics? You mean sexuality, Asma? Can you please clarify? Yes, okay. How to address sexuality and these topics to people of special needs. I work with some. James, would you like to take up this question?
Well, sometimes I mean, the sexuality can be very ripe there, but it depends on the level of special needs. So it depends on the level of understanding. Sometimes it might not be possible to address in that way. So I think it depends on their level of cognition. So maybe the example is probably the easiest understood thing rather than speech or text, like Rio was saying before. That's something that we immediately pick up. We have mirror neurons that kind of mirror the experiences of other people and make them our own. So I think when we can be natural and free, that allows that for them. It allows permission for emotions. I think all the things that we were talking about before for children could be the same. It really, but it depends on the particular special needs. So I don't think there's a catch-all thing that's right. It depends on levels of ability to understand and cognition.
Yeah, yeah. I think it depends on, yeah, what kind of special needs, as you said, is important to understand. Yeah, if it's a physical disability, then it may be still the same way that they can work on their sexuality, then kind of maybe any other kind of special needs, whether autistic or, yeah. So, yes, I hope it answered in some ways, Asma, for you. We have another question, which I really find it interesting to read it out, is in my understanding, Tantra is transcendence from sex, using sex itself as a tool. I have heard some masters saying Tantra has nothing to do with sex. On the other hand, some of the volumes of Tantra Sutra from Osho, which I have read, made me feel that Tantra provides techniques to get in the center of your being, neither indulge nor escape. Please comment. Yes, Sandeep, you are right. Advice. And this is what there are a lot of myths around Tantra. So yeah, it's important that we share and talk about it. Please, James, would you like to take it first? And or Ria, I see you eager to take it. Yeah.
Well, as you're saying, like, did it mention? No, in the vegan Bhairava of Tantra, there is 112 meditations, and only 6 of tantric meditations, tantric practices, and only 6 of them, James, 6 of them are regarding
Directly,
are about,
yeah.
sorry, they're
Yeah,
about
that's right. Yeah.
actually actual act of love, and all the other practices are completely not around sexual life and sexual act. So Tantra is inclusive. Tantra is including everything. So of course it includes sexuality, and because sexuality is such a repressed subject, that's why all the attention goes to this little piece that is there, and this is how Tantra became all about sex, whilst Tantra is simply deepening and deepening yourself, deepening connection with yourself, by that deepening the connection with other people. It's making you more aware, it's making you more conscious, you're growing from all these practices, you're becoming more present, more conscious. And of course, because it includes sexual life, it also puts all of these qualities on your sexual life. So you're becoming more present, more aware, more conscious of what you're doing, why you're doing, how you're doing. And then the sex itself is used as a door, but it's like, this is the whole topic of the sex being, we're doing it as the, oh, I lost the word, as the our that it has a purpose, that it's a purpose, sex itself, whilst it's not the purpose, it's just the door to something much bigger. I remember that when I went on my very first Tantra workshops, I felt like in this book where Narnia, where you're entering through the wardrobe, you're entering the whole tremendous world that I had no idea it existed. So then sex is just opening the door to this whole world. And this is my understanding of how, what sex has to do with Tantra.
Cool. I'm going to answer as well. I feel we've lost Srishti. She seems to have disappeared from my screen. So for me, like everything that Ria's just said is perfect. I feel that whenever anyone says like what Tantra is, including myself, don't believe them. It's such a big inclusive thing. Find the authority in yourself. Don't believe these people who say it's all this or it's all that or it shouldn't be this way. I don't feel like Tantra has all these shoulds and shouldn'ts in it. I think the best thing is to go into nature and to see what is part of nature. If Tantra is including life and becoming aware in it, then go to nature, and sex is a part of nature. But it's just a part of it. It's not the whole thing. There's more to the play. And Tantra, there's so much in the play. So enjoy the sexuality, but don't get stuck at that table. There's a lot of other places to explore in it. And there's a lot of deepening that can be had. So that's my angle. But I don't feel anyone has the truth on Tantra. I feel that's a game that gets played out by people's egos.
Thank you so much. There is this last question which I can see. How and where can we learn Tantra from? Of course, there are so many experts. We have James, who does Awaken as Love trainings, and he does several festivals all around the world. Plus, there are a lot of online trainings which you can catch up on our own site, www.evolvebeings.com, wherein we have Tantra for couples, we have Tantra for women, we are coming up for Tantra for men course. So online, offline, all the options are there. And yes, please email us when the videos are uploaded. Yes, you will receive the email. I cannot see the prior questions, but yes, we will take a note. And if in case we haven't taken up any questions in this session, we will take it up for the next session. And thank you everybody for joining us. And thank you, James and Riya, for taking out this time and giving such beautiful insights from your own personal experience and embodiment. And yes, it's beautiful sharing on self-love and worth. We made sure to include this topic in our session and summit because this is the core, this is the foundation. So if the foundation is not correct, then whatever we would try to build up on the top would fall. It would not be a strong pyramid or strong building or structure. So yes, thank you so much everybody for joining. And how you can support us if you have enjoyed this session and our yesterday session, please please share it on your social media. It helps us to spread the message and this work far to all around the world. And yes, stay tuned in. You have link for our Instagram and Facebook. Please follow us and join us and share and spread the word. Please also share, Sarah, the video link from Riya, her video. So it would be beautiful for everybody to also watch it later. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Much